What's going on, everybody? Big week. We got a lot of stuff coming up. Let me kind of lay things out for you. On Friday, I've got a super fun conversation which I recorded last night with my buddy Dylan of Double D Vintage Baseball Cards and Joe Perot. Now, if that name rings a bell, Joe Perot is on Sports Cards Live with Jeremy Lee on Saturday nights. Now, he's not on every episode, but he's on most episodes. He's sort of like the sidekick to Jeremy Lee. Now, Jeremy Lee's got a fantastic live stream. Again, recommend that you subscribe to him on and watch those on Saturday night. The chat is off the charts fun, and he's just a great podcaster. So Joe Perot gonna be on with myself and with Dylan. We look at their collections, how they collect, some really interesting things. I kind of had a list of some ideas of some things that I wanted to cover, and we only got to a couple of them because there were so many different rabbit holes that we went down. You will not want to miss Friday's episode. That will be posting Friday morning. Saturday is going to be the MidLife Community Show and Tell. So one of my favorite episodes each and every month. I get to share your pickups from the last month or so. And there are some absolutely monster cards, as always. Some unique cards, some stuff you don't see all the time. Love that episode. You'll want to check that out Saturday morning. So Friday morning is going to be the conversation with Dylan and Joe. Saturday morning is going to be the Midlife Community Show and Tell. And then Monday, I'm going to do things a little bit differently. My normal Monday episode where I cover your responses to my question is going to get postponed a week because I have a special episode that will be airing on Monday. So Friday morning, Saturday morning, Monday morning, a lot to look forward to. My daughters are coming home this weekend from their trip. Excited to see them. That's one of the reasons I kind of tweaked things for Mondays so I can spend some time with them. And today is our Q&A episode, which you guys know I love these. I love doing these episodes. You guys always bring it with interesting questions. And this week, there's some meat and potatoes in these questions this week. So enough of me rambling about this. Let's go ahead and hear me ramble about my responses to your questions, starting with this first one. My buddy Jeremy says, "Hey Greg, good talking points this week. I can also back that Tony, Darren, and Petty are freaking amazing dudes. I've shared small value pickups with Petty and on the floor with some of the other Midlife Nation dudes, all happy and encouraging with all cards. Here is not really a question, but more of a thinker. Many are SGC fans, including me. If they do phase them out, will dudes like me want their cards to be uniform, pay more for the tux? Short time problem that will work its way out, but could this happen for a few years? Let's all chip in and buy SGC back." All right, Jeremy with a super interesting question and a different perspective to this whole SGC thing that we're all kind of watching and waiting to see what takes place. It was fun to run into you, Jeremy, and spend a little bit of time at the Fairfield show a little over, well, it wasn't even a week ago, just under a week ago. We got to do that. So this is an interesting question. A lot of us in the hobby are very, very obsessive, compulsive, picky. We like straight lines. We like things to look certain ways. It's one of the things that draws us to the hobby. One of the things that draws us to a hobby that is a condition-sensitive thing is some of our compulsiveness to uniformity. So I know a lot of us have gone heavy into SGC. Why? Because SGC over the last 2-3 years at least has been fantastic. They've been better than PSA. A lot of people like the tuck slab. A lot of people like the quick turnaround. A lot of people like the better pricing. A lot of people like the customer service. They like the consistency of grading. There's a lot of reasons that people have liked SGC, and now people have gone heavy into SGC, and then they say, what if something happens to SGC now that the collector's company, which also owns PSA, owns SGC? Will people say, nope, I will not go to PSA. I will not buy PSA slabs. I am going to hunt for SGC slabs. And there be a permanent, if again, this is all assuming SGC went away, that's the basis of the question. If there is a stop to the supply because SGC is no longer slabbing cards. Again, not saying that's going to happen, but that's what the question is saying. So the question is saying, if they stopped doing grading, would the price of SGC slabs actually go up because the supply has stopped, the demand may not change, and people would say, I want to continue to only collect SGC slabs? For a very short period of time, my response would be maybe. There might be a few people out there that say, no, I'm not switching. You can't make me. I'm going to stay with SGC. Now, remember a few years ago, remember growing up when your TV was a square? Remember that? And now TVs are rectangles, right? They more mirror the dimensions of like a movie screen. But they used to be square. So what started happening is there was like the wide screen and there was the full screen. It's like you could get a movie, like you could buy a DVD and it'd have a wide screen. And if you got the widescreen version, there was like this black part like a black across the top and a black across the bottom because it was on a square TV, but it was a rectangle. And eventually everyone said, this is where things are headed. We'll just adopt the new technology, which is the rectangle. I remember when there were virtually no more square TVs, tube TVs. And then I went with my father-in-law to get a new TV. And I think we went to Circuit City. I don't even know if Circuit City still exists. We went to Circuit City and he walks over to the one square TV and goes, I'll take that one. And they're like, but sir, television broadcasting is going to be these other dimensions. And so if you have a square TV, you're not going to get to use the full size of your TV because everything is going to be this different dimension. He goes, I don't care. I want it. I don't need to switch. I'll take this one. He was like the last adopter of the new dimensions of TVs. And that's what you're describing. You're describing now there's something that's obsolete. If SGC went away, which we'll talk more about that in a second. If SGC went away, SGC moving forward would be obsolete. Remember, like you'd in middle school or high school, you'd get a book, or in college. Remember in college, you'd go to sell the book back, and they go, "Sorry, we adopted a new version. That book is obsolete." It's not that the book doesn't exist anymore. It's just they're not producing that book anymore. People aren't using that book as much anymore, so they wouldn't want to buy it back. And you're like, "Oh, come on, man. I was going to buy that back. I was going to sell that back and save some money." And that's kind of what we're describing. So I don't really think that will happen, at least not for long. There will absolutely, if SGC goes away, be some people that say, well, then it's not PSA, so what else? And there will be some people that will try to hang on to SGC and have their collection stay all SGC. But there will come a point where that will not be possible anymore. What about every modern card from that point forward? I don't collect modern, I only collect vintage. I don't know. I mean, most of us have at least a couple of modern cards. Maybe, there's this new hot phenom for your favorite team, and you just want one of his cards. If SGC can't slab it, you're no longer purely SGC. So I don't think that would happen indefinitely. I do think there will be a short period of time where people will say, well, I'm not going PSA, I'm not going PSA, and they'll continue to look for SGC. And you might see a mini little window just doing what you're describing, Jeremy, where there's a kind of a feeding frenzy for existing SGCs, but then I think that wave will pass quickly. Do I know this to be true? Of course not. You're asking my opinion. This is my opinion. Now, Nat Turner went on with trading card therapy with Leighton Sheldon. So Leighton Sheldon's been a dealer and a collector in the community for a long, long time. And he also is a regular on Sports Cards Live with Jeremy Lee on Saturday nights. And Leighton had his trading card therapy episode on his channel where his guest this past week, it was Nat Turner. And he asked him, are you killing SGC? And he goes, no, we're not killing SGC. And a lot of people ran out and said, this is great news. SGC's not being killed. And it's so funny because I've had so many people say to me, see, Greg, you were wrong. They're not killing SGC. And I'm like, I don't recall saying SGC was dead on arrival. I've had other people say, Greg, you're a moron because you don't think SGC is going away. I'm like, I never said I didn't think they were going away. I've never really taken a strong stance of what I think is going to happen. What is happening is the erosion of the core of what SGC is. SGC, the label, is alive at the moment, and it may be alive for a long time. But the SGC that we all fell for, that is dead. It's always going to have, it will never go back to the 5 to 10 day. You will never have 5-day turnarounds anymore with SGC. Not going to happen. Prices will not come down. I do not anticipate SGC doing on-site grading at the National this year again. I do not anticipate Peter Steinberg being there much longer. The other thing that Nat Turner, again, the CEO of Collectors, which is the umbrella, the parent company that owns PSA and owns SGC, that he said was, we have a few people who SGC graders who we've offered PSA positions to. So we've opened up a facility for PSA grading to help with our backlog over in Boca Raton in the same facility as SGC, because some of the SGC people want to be PSA graders. I have a feeling the people who switched, there may have been some sort of financial incentive for them to switch. I just a guess. But and I've heard a lot of people talk about this. I'm not going to bring any breaking news to the situation. The takeaway that I have is this. Nat Turner said, we were getting some of the SGC graders to come over to PSA to help with our backlog. Wait a second. We've been fed a line for the last 3 or 4 months that the reason that SGC went from 5 to 10 days turnaround to 6 to 8 weeks turnaround is because they've got a backlog. So PSA apparently has a backlog, according to Nat, and SGC has a backlog, which is apparently the reason that they're not doing bulk submissions, and is apparently the reason that they've slowed things down. That's the line we've been told. So what do is you take some of the SGC graders where there's supposedly a backlog, and you bring them over to PSA where there's supposedly a backlog? Let's just assume that's true. Let's just assume that SGC really has a backlog. PSA has a bigger backlog, so they're taking SGC graders over to PSA to help with PSA's backlog because PSA has more demand. Let's assume that that's true. Let's assume that everything that they've told us is true. Doesn't that mean that they're prioritizing PSA's backlog over SGC's backlog? If SGC just went from 5 to 10 days to 2 months, and PSA is always slow, they've been slow forever, and you're taking graders from SGC who's backlogged and bringing them over to PSA to help with PSA's backlog, isn't that telling us that your priority is taking care of PSA, not taking care of SGC? So if all of the lines that they're telling us are actually true, they are saying something loud and clear. And what they're saying loud and clear is PSA is way more important to us than SGC. And that in itself should be concerning if you're an SGC person. Do I think the SGC brand is going to get the rug pulled out from under it soon? I don't know. I think it's a coin flip. In the next 2 years, I'd say maybe. 50-50 flip a coin. I always lose those, so whatever I guess would be wrong. But, guys, the statement that Nat Turner made, when you really look at it, it is very clearly telling you what the parent company's priority is. He said straight up, we've offered positions from SGC graders to go to PSA and help with the backlog and the backup and the turnaround times at PSA. Meanwhile, SGC's grading turnaround times tripled and quadrupled. So the brand may still exist, but the company as you know it is dead. Question for next week, Greg. With the National coming up, do you think better deals are to be found at trade nights rather than the show floor? Part of me is thinking buying from fellow collectors who will flip that money into the show is where the deals are to be found. Thanks, Brian. This is a fantastic question. It is an absolutely fantastic question. If you're going to go to the National and you are looking to get deals, where are you more likely to find the deals? Well, first of all, dealers are in the business to make money. And dealers are biting off the biggest overhead of the year at the National. The table fees, the travel, the lodging, all of that for the National, their staffing is so much higher for that week than any other week all year. So the people trying to make a profit, their bills all go up that week, okay? Now, collectors, guys like us, just regular old guys, we may have some great cards that we just kind of fell out of love with. And we said, you know what? I want that thing over there. I want that shiny object instead of this shiny object. So I think I'm interested in selling the card that I have to get that item. Okay? Now, what happens is you go, okay, I want to liquidate it. Me, regular guy that doesn't have a table, wants to liquidate it. If I sell it on eBay and I sell it for full comp, I'm going to walk away with about 85%, and the IRS is going to come after me for my profit that I made on the card if I made profit. If I go to a dealer, the dealer's going to offer me somewhere between 75 and 85%. So your best case scenario, if you are a collector, just regular old guy like me, is that you are going to get 85% of the value of the card. That's your best case scenario. Now, are there outliers? Are there some times where maybe you can get more than 85%? Sure. But for most of us, most people in this generic, hypothetical are hoping to walk with 85%. If we're really lucky, maybe it sells a little above comp and we get 90%. So when people like us go to a trade night, which by the way, let me just pause for a second. What is a trade night? A trade night is a bunch of non-dealers standing around and sitting around selling their cards. It's basically a card show. It's basically a card show where collectors are selling instead of dealers are selling, okay? And there's not table fees. There's no overhead. So if I go up to a dealer and I want to buy a card and his overhead is as high as it's been ever, he spent all this travel money to get there, and I want to sell it to him, he's got tighter margins than he's had all year. But if I go to a collector who has no overhead in that card, right? They're thinking, man, if I could just get 85% out of it. So if you offer that guy 90% of the card, he's probably going to take it. He's better than he's going to do on eBay. Way better than he's going to do on eBay. So when 4 collectors put on the trade night at Strongsville, it was great. First of all, it was fun. It was well organized. They did a fantastic job. Kudos to them. But the people that were selling were not trying to get 105% of comp. They were going, man, if I could just get like 90%. So they'd put things out at comp price. People would make them an offer and they'd say, yeah, this is great. I get 90%. And now I have more money to go back over to the show tomorrow. I think that at a trade night, you're going to do much better than at the show. That's based on experience, but that's based on logic of what does it cost a collector to sell one of their cards at a trade night? Nothing. What does it cost a dealer to sell you a card at the National? A lot. And they're also going to try to turn it for a profit. So they're going to try to get it for even less, so their margin is higher. The guy who's selling the card is going to take every dime and then go buy more fun stuff. I think trade nights are probably where you'll get the best deal. That's not all. Greg, are you saying that there are going to be no good deals at the National? No, I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that if you line up 10 cards at a trade night and you line up 10 cards at the National floor, the deals will likely be better at trade night. That's my experience, and that's my opinion. Here's a question for next week. I just went to a local card show in Tennessee, and I plan to go to the National in Nashville next month, which is considered the second largest in the country. The big take I got from the smaller venue I went to in Cooksville was that Pokemon is taking over. More than half of the 90 tables were Pokemon. My question is, do you think Pokemon and modern sports cards will continue to gain ground on while the vintage will be slowly moving to the dustbin of history with few collectors, sellers left. I found almost no vintage in that local show. I hope that is not the case in Nashville. Your thoughts? Fun question, good question. And I just went to a card show this past weekend. And when I was at the show, the percentage of Pokemon tables is 100% growing. When I first attended this show, I don't know, 4 years ago, there were maybe 5 Pokemon tables. I would say there were at least 100 this weekend. That is a lot more. Math tells me that there's more now than there used to be. So what does that mean? What that means is that it's going to potentially be an issue with local card shows, especially. For local card shows, I do think that you're going to continue to see more of it. So does that mean, to your question, does that mean that vintage is going to go to the dustbin? Does that mean that vintage is going to die off? No. I actually, believe it or not, I think a lot of vintage collectors are pretty content looking on the auction houses, looking on eBay, even looking on Facebook to make purchases. They're not flipping. They're not in a rush to buy and then to sell. Vintage collectors are more patient, and vintage collectors are not looking to move things as things don't need to be as liquid, meaning you don't need to be able to sell them and move them quickly. When you go to these shows, it's literally like watching hot potatoes, these Pokemon cards. It's literally like these people get them and they're immediately trying to sell them. Heck, Jeff Wilson's channel the other day had a whole 30-minute episode where his son was going around the show and he was buying cards from collectors and he was buying cards off of tables and then he was flipping them right there. And his whole goal, and they said at the beginning of the episode, Jeff said, "This is not for the faint of heart. There's flipping going on here. This is all about flipping." He was buying and selling the hot potato, trying to get a little margin, even if it was $20, $40, to create a nest egg for him to then go buy something. That is along the lines of what Pokemon is. How many people, now, Greg, how do you know this? I guess I don't, but based on what I see at shows, it is a lot of quick transactions. It is a lot of looking at comps, what percentage, sort of like with modern stuff when we see these modern channels doing some of these. And I don't mean modern collectors, I mean modern flippers. It's just a form of currency. Pokemon cards are a form of currency. And it's just stored in this card. It's almost like a cryptocurrency. And does that mean there are no Pokemon collectors? No, I'm not saying that. But I just get the impression, how many times have I seen one of these modern card dealers say, this Joe Burrow's going into my personal collection. It's not going anywhere. And then 3 episodes later, you see him selling it at a show. People don't get as attached. I don't know if it's younger people or if it's collectors of some modern, ultra modern. I don't know. And some of you are probably throwing rotten tomatoes going, hey, you're not describing me. Whenever I make any sort of generalization, it doesn't mean all. It means a good chunk. And I think a good chunk of Pokemon collectors, dealers, ultra modern, not all. I have some good friends that have channels that are really love modern and ultra modern cards, and they're not going anywhere. So this is not mean for everyone. But generally speaking, if you lined up 100 vintage collectors and you lined up 100 ultra modern collectors and you lined up 100 Pokemon collectors and you went through their collection and you picked a card and goes, how long have you owned this card? My guess, and I think that I'm probably right, is that the people who are collecting vintage probably hang on to their cards the longest. So what I actually think, and I, at this point, I don't even remember what the question was. I think what the question was is Pokemon and modern, are Pokemon and modern, sorry, Joe, going to take over and vintage is going to go away? My answer is no. I just think at card shows, a lot of local card shows, not big regional shows, not the national, but a lot of local shows have become like pop-up flipping locations where people are trying to buy here, sell over here for a little bit more, and get a little margin. Meanwhile, that's not the culture of vintage card collectors. They tend to purchase, store, appreciate some more, store longer, appreciate some more. It's not going out as soon as it's coming in. So I think what's happening is a lot of local card shows are becoming pop-up flip spots for flippers, and there's less long-term holding type people. There are still some. I'm one. I was at a card show this weekend. But generally speaking, I think that there is a lot of vintage being bought and sold on Facebook, on eBay, and on auction houses. I just don't think that the culture of flipping, which has taken over local card shows, is congruent with vintage card collecting. So a lot of those dealers are just selling online and not dealing with that overhead anymore. Hi, Greg. Here is my question for future episodes. I noticed that some collectors have their cards displayed on their walls in cabinets. I think they look great. My only worry is that the sunlight will fade the cards over time. What is your opinion on displaying cards or having them stored in boxes? I think that when you have an asset and the asset has a certain amount of value, you have to treat it differently than another asset that doesn't have as much value. I mean, what are you most protective of? You're probably like most protective of your family members. Like somebody would have to drive a car through me to get to my daughters or my wife. I'm very protective of them because they mean a lot to me. And those have a ton of value to me. But if I have a soda on the and I'm sitting at a table and someone knocks it over, I'm like, it's just a soda. It's not that big a deal that somebody ruined my soda. But if you knock over my daughter, I'm going to flip out. So when something has additional value, you protect it differently. So I've shown my card room. I showed it not that long ago. And I've got a case on the wall that has about 25 cards in it. And the most expensive card in it is maybe $400. And the reason that I don't have my most expensive cards in it is because I need to protect those because of the potential loss and the potential trauma if something were to happen to those. So I like those display cases on the walls. I have one, but I don't have my 20 best cards. I have 20 interesting cards that aren't ultra expensive. Because if something were to happen to them, if they were to have light fade them, I would be bummed out by that. So to answer your question, I think having interesting cards displayed is fun. It's a conversation piece. It's an easy way to share your collection with somebody who comes by. But the expensive stuff, I think you should be a little bit more protective of. A lot of the times you'll drive around the neighborhood and the old beat up pickup truck that the family has, that's parked in the driveway or on the street. But the brand new Porsche that they bought, that's probably in the garage. So I think the things that don't have as much value, I'm not concerned about displaying because my potential loss isn't as great. So I hear what you're saying. I agree with what you're saying. And it absolutely affects which cards I do and don't display from my collection. In addition to some great comments, there's a question here that says, here's a question for some future Q&A. Since your daughter Lucy is highly interested in playing soccer, has she gotten the collecting bug to collect any soccer cards? It's the world's game. How far has the collecting bug reached your daughter? Just inquiring. Keep up the hard work. Thanks. All right, this is a fun question. Now, I think that a lot of us as parents, we want to find connections with our kids. We want to find things that we have in common so that we have something to talk about, we have something to do together, we have something to bond over. And so, yeah, if the fact that my dad is into cards and I'm into cards is great. It gives us something to do and talk about. And it's one of the things that generationally you root for teams together, and your grandpa was this fan and your dad was a this fan, your kids are a this fan, and that's part of the fun. But I also know that you can't force your kids to get into something. They have to have something in them that wants to do it. And, I exposed my kids to a lot of stuff growing up, a lot of different sports, a lot of different activities. But I don't think it's a coincidence that I've always been really into soccer. And I watched soccer on weekends. I coached Lucy's soccer teams. I played high-level soccer. And then Lucy got into soccer. I don't think it's a coincidence that I'm really into golf. And I played competitive golf growing up. And I play a fair amount of golf now, not as much as I wish I did. And Molly got really into golf. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that our kids are always watching. They're always listening, even when we don't think that they are. And so that's why the way that we carry ourselves at times is super important, because you're like, my kid's not noticing what I'm doing or how I'm acting right now, but they are. And so I do know that my kids see that I'm doing a YouTube channel, which is a hobby, and I'm collecting cards, which is a hobby, and I'm golfing, which is a hobby, and I'm watching soccer and other sports, which is a hobby. I know that they see that. And I do think that it is leaving an impression. I haven't even started to answer your question, but I'm getting there. So because anything that I love, I want to share with people I love. When my wife and I were first dating, I bought her a really nice set of golf clubs, hoping that she would get into golf so we could golf together. Didn't really pan out. My wife's a really good athlete, but she's just not that into golf. So she'll play a couple of times a year, and that's about it. But I've tried to encourage or expose my kids to cards. So, for example, Lucy's favorite soccer player ever is Carly Lloyd. So I did buy her this Carly Lloyd auto card. and I gave it to her for Christmas one year. And, she likes it. It's on her dresser. But I was just trying to go, hey, come on in, check this out. Molly is she's a reader, she's a baker, she's a cook, she's a gardener, she's a reader, she's really into movies. So she loves the Star Wars franchise a lot. So I bought her a Baby Yoda rookie card, gave that to her one year for Christmas. And again, she has it on her bookcase, but it didn't really start anything crazy. So, and that's okay. It's okay that, they're not into it. It's okay. But I do think that they see me having hobbies outside of, my work and my other things that I do. I do know that they notice it. And I do think that it's leaving an impression where that someday they go, what's my hobby? Or they really take to something and go, it's okay to have a hobby like this. Because I remember my dad used to go to these card shows and he'd fly to Cleveland 3 times in 12 months, and so to answer your question, I have purchased them cards. They haven't really gotten into it. They seem interested when I get excited about something that I do or buy with the hobby, but it's not really translating into them at this point getting into the hobby. But my estate sailing and my yard sailing, they both are curious about, and they've both attended some of those with me. And they kind of see the process I go through with that. And I think that might have some potential, because that is a lot of fun. I got to tell you guys, it's a lot of fun. So great question. Great questions from everybody this week. Remember, as always, if you have a question for an upcoming episode, down below in the comments, simply ask your question. And I look forward to hearing what you guys want to hear me talk about. A lot going on in the hobby. The Nationals right around the corner. I've just got so much I'm excited about for the National. Not just the cards, but the connections as well.